Mike here again, back down in the workshop, and today we're just going to jump right back into my hot rod tele project. First things first, I just took some of this cloth pushback wire, just vintage style hookup wire for guitars, and I soldered on some very tiny ring terminals with a little bit of heat shrink, just to make it look neat and nice.
I need my pencil! Give me something to write on, man!
So, I had to find my pencil, and I'm just going to roughly mark this stuff approximately where I want it to go. Just tuck it here so it's down and out of the way. Nothing too fancy schmancy. A little tape flag on my drill bit here so I can tell how deep to stop, because I don't need to be drilling in China. Get that dirt out of there. Just pre-drilling holes there so that my little wood screws aren't going to strip out. Just route the wiring. And I mean, this body, and actually the original ones from the 50s, they're pretty generous with how much room there is. I mean, obviously this has a routing from the factory for humbuckers. So I got my hole pre-drilled, and then I'll just run that screw in. And then that will make the cavity shielding paint on the body that we did a while back actually part of the circuit of the guitar. It'll be part of the ground circuit. I'm just putting them sort of in the middle-ish, down and out of the way, just so there's no risk that they'll, touch the adjustment screws for the pickups or anything like that. And because I'm pretty much OCD on stuff, I'm just using a simple multimeter here with a continuity check to make sure that my wiring is going to be a good ground. So being the OCD guy that I am working on guitars, we're going to do a simple continuity test. So I'm just going to take one end of the lead, put it anywhere on the shielding, then I'm going to take my wire that I just made and make sure it tones out. If I get it on there, that one's good. Check this guy. It's hard to do with one hand here. Get on there. There we go. So that tones out. Of course it would. Get this guy out of here. I now have these two leads here, and they're gonna attach to the control plate where the other grounds terminate. So the moment I've been waiting for here for a long time is to finally get this stuff put together. Funny thing is the knowing what pickups I was going to put into it, that was actually the easiest decision. I knew I was going to put Seymour, Duncan, Pearly gates in there from day one. So this guy's a neck humbucker with a nickel cover on it. It's really, really nice. And it's nice that Seymour gave me mounting screws, but what's even nicer is that they are slotted and nickel-plated screws. So that's one thing I didn't have to source, because you know what? I forgot about the humbucker when I was buying screws and hardware. So to protect the body here for a little bit, I'm just going to put this microfiber over it, because I'm going to have to wrestle the bear that is mounting the attachment screws. This is always a real fun task of limiting four-letter words and trying not to send screws and springs flying across the room, because it's a high probability that you will, or that I will. We got one screw started. Nope. This cracks me up every time, man. It is a bear fighting these springs. StewMac sells some goofy little clip. I've never used it. I think you'd be almost spending as much time wrestling that clip as you would be just doing it this way. But still, these things are a pain in the rear end to start. Once you get a couple of threads started, you should be good. So there's that one. I like to start those by hand so I don't end up shooting screws across the room or stripping it out. I think I'm safe to peel off my plastic cover now. So Seymour Duncan was nice enough to provide a little cover there for the pickup. Get that guy up there. Mounted on the guitar, it's not really gonna, you know, once you set it to the right height on a Telecaster, that pickup really doesn't stick out too much. And just to be safe, I'm going to put this guy back on here. That's just a piece of plastic. Get this guy out of my way. Try and grab him on the other end. Alright, then little block of foam. I may or may not need that block of foam. Let's compress this guy and see. I don't want to overstuff it, you know. Nope, not gonna need it. So I didn't end up needing this guy because that actually holds that pickup in place just fine, so don't need that. Now we will put our pickguard screws in and get this guy mounted up. We really used a leather pickguard, so this is a new one on me. Usually on a plastic one, I like to mount the corners and kind of let it find its own center. I've held it up to the original one I had, and it's an exact match, so it should fit just fine. Granted, I'm trying to make it look like an early 50s Telecaster, but this is an 8-hole pickguard, like the modern tellies would have. And that's mainly because it is a modern telly, right? It's not a vintage telly. But I won't tell if you won't tell. If you take the time to do this little trick where you back the screws, run them backwards and then run them forward, and listen for the step where it climbs up out of the threads, you shouldn't strip out the screw holes on the guitar. Now these two holes in the back I think I'm going to leave loose, just so I got a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to the control plate. Now, because this is leather, I am pretty darn sure that I can tighten these screws so much that they would poke right through it. So they've only got to be good enough, you know. I don't have to kill them. This looks so cool. I love this. You'll have to forgive me while I geek out here. I mean, look at that. Isn't that just cool as can be? Of course it is. Don't kid yourself. Get the pickup through the hole a little bit more here. Of course, this still has to be adjusted to the correct height for the guitar, but I just wanted to kind of... I really like that Seymour gives you that little piece of plastic there. That does help protect the guitar quite a bit. I just have to kind of pre-build the bridge plate here. With these Goto compensated saddles, they come in brass and actually they make titanium versions. I've had those before, and man, that's a really good tone upgrade. You have to kind of look for the stagger. You have to kind of look for the stagger on these to make sure that that the string's in the right position. And if it's not the right stagger to set the intonation right, all you got to do is pull out the Allen set screws and then flip the brass saddle upside down, because they're all identical. It's staggered one direction on one side of it, and then when you flip these saddles upside down, it's staggered the opposite direction. So what you want in general is, if this is the bass E and this is the treble E, as it's pointing back at me, the compensation should be further back and then slightly forward and then slightly forward again as you go from from, you know, your 6 string to the 5 to the 4, and then when you're the 3, the 2, and the 1 string also stair steps again to match the compensation. So if you just watch for that, you'll be fine. And luckily, I have the indentations here because I've used this bridge before. So I know approximately how far these guys get wound in. So I should be in the ballpark-esque of where they need to be come time to do the intonation on this bad boy. Lastly, because of the compensation, it also helps locate the strings side to side, which is an issue you have when you use a vintage style bridge that you've clearanced with notches for a Bigsby, because they actually make a Bigsby kit for a Tele and it doesn't use this bridge. It uses kind of like a Jaguar Mustang style, like Tune-O-Matic-esque bridge. A quick look at this guy. See, and it's wax potted too, nice. It's a Seymour Duncan vintage stack. So on the outside, I mean, that pretty much, other than the Seymour Duncan that's silk screened on there, I mean, that looks just like your typical Tele pickup. But I've got 4 wires here. That's what's going to allow me to get a fairly clean sound with low noise. Also, the bridge plate is grounded to the wiring harness, which means the screws that thread through here also get grounded. Thereby, the bridge plate gets grounded and anything attached to it. So the little wire I got running to the Bigsby gets grounded through the plate, through the pickup, through that little wire because of the screws, and then it all ends up on a control plate at the volume. Alrighty, so I've got some better mounting screws here. I ended up going with the springs here instead of little surgical tubes. And the reason why is it just makes better continuity. They don't dry rot, the springs don't, and it's not really a 52. I'm not doing a vintage reissue or anything like that, or restoring a vintage guitar. So we've got the copper plated steel base plate, and it has a ground soldered to it that's part of this wiring. It's also attached to the ground from the pickup itself. That's very important to understand, because on Telecasters, if it has the base plate and it's built correctly, the pickup that is, the mounting screws actually continue ground for the bridge itself. We'll just fish this wire through, and obviously I got my pickup turned around backwards. I got my little grounding wire here for my Bigsby. If I get the trim arm out of the way, maybe I'll see it easier. Now, I've had this bridge on and off this guitar over the years many times. I don't need to re-wax these screws because they've been waxed plenty of times. And it doesn't have to get super tightened, just like anything else on an electric guitar. I think people usually tend to over tighten these screws and they make a mess out of the threads. It is just going into wood after all. We're going to get our old multimeter out here, and it's sent to continuity check again. And I'm going to grab the wire lead from the new Seymour Duncan vintage stack there in the bridge position. I'm going to hold my finger on that. Now, if this is correct, which I know it is, from the ground wire here on the harness and the negative lead, which they're tied together to the mounting screws, we have continuity. So the bridge is part of the ground. My little jumper wire here is part of the ground also. And now if I touch any point on the Bigsby, the whole thing is grounded now. Now we got a complete ground path from the Bigsby to the bridge through the little jumper wire tied in by the screws that mount it. You know, you're going to have your hand on there when you're playing. So the bridge is part of the ground. It goes through the attachment screws, through the pickup, and the ground lead for the pickup along with the negative lead are going to both end up being tied eventually when it's all wired up to the ground on the output jack. So that's how it's That's how it's supposed to be wired. Check that out. That is just bitchin' as hell. Well, if you're into like country music and Brad Paisley kind of guitar licks and stuff, or any kind of B-bender work, this takes place of the standard spring clipped in output jack for a Telecaster. Use my scratch awl here to kind of make some divots in the wood because the drill bit wants to walk on me. It's kind of cool, the screw holes are actually going to go in at the same kind of in line with the pattern that Julie did. Alright, so now that I got that pre-drilled, I need to get to making my output jack wiring harness. These leads are a lot longer than they probably need to be because I'm going to reverse the control plate so that the switch is at the back side. That way, if I want to do volume swells, it's a little easier to get after them. I like this pushback wire because it does what it says. Push it back. It exposes the conductor. So I need to tin the wire before I solder it to the output jack. After a while, you just get the hang of how to solder. This is just like a little container of copper mesh. If you know a guy who works in a machine shop, you can make your own. But it helps clean off the solder tip. If you tin your leads before you try to make a permanent solder connection, it makes life a lot more simple. This is the signal side of the jack, and this part here is the ground side. If you can see, this bit here is what would contact the back portion of the jack, and then the tip here obviously contacts the tip. So if you plug it in, you can tell how that makes the circuit. So this piece right here, if I trace it around, goes to this tab. And Switchcraft actually has, if you ever want to know and you get a legit Switchcraft output jack, see how that's got like this kind of barbed portion of that terminal versus this one? Well, that's also, I mean, you can tell that terminal is going to the ring on the output jack. So polarity of that is really important. You can start your day off bad by getting the polarity of everything wrong right from the beginning. And the way I typically like to solder these in is for the wire to come from the inside and through the hole like that, and pull the wire kind of straight, if that makes sense. And the reason why is it puts more shielding towards the jack, just in case you're not super neat about your work. It's a good insurance program to keep you from shorting wire out against the jack itself. Alrighty, so just start off with a little bit of solder. And I'll just heat that part up. These things don't need to be freaking drowned in solder either. This is 6040 rosin core solder, so it has its own flux built into it. If I just give that a second or two, it solidifies and good to go. Oops. Now, I'm actually going to reflow that real quick because I want to ensure that that's not a cold solder joint. And it's kind of hard at this stage to do that because it's like I don't have enough hands. Give it one more touch up because I don't have a ton of solder in there right as it is now. There we go. Get that end. There we go. Should always flow, the solder should flow into the joint. You shouldn't have any blobs of it sitting on top, because otherwise you'll have a cold solder joint. Just going to take and nip these little ends off so it's nice and neat. I'm going to probably file that down just a little bit because it's, you know, in a Telecaster it's pretty tight inside where the output jack goes. In the end, this is going to get covered in heat shrink. Give this a little bit of heat shrink just to protect it that much more. I kind of do this as a two-stage so I can build it up. I wish they made a heat shrink gun that was this tiny. Now I'm going to make one more layer here. This is all to prevent future problems, and also to have super neat professional work, because that's how I operate. Let that cool off there for a sec. Clean off my soldering iron. So next step here is to physically mount this dude to the electro socket. Now these basically just spin on. They're threaded on the inside, but I don't want it to come apart. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite, because I don't want it loosening up over time. Run the inner nut in. Now normally there's a washer associated with your Switchcraft output jack. I am not using that washer. I am just running the nut down on here, and when I put this together you'll see why. You know, probably one of the most annoying things there is when a stupid output jack comes loose on your guitar and is banging around in there. So this should avoid that situation altogether. So the thread locker will basically lock this in, hence the name. That's pretty much ready to install, except for one thing. Now I've left this lead extra long here because I'm going to twist it some. I'll do this on a Telecaster, put my finger there at the end of the tip of the output jack, and then start twisting from this point on. And this helps with crosstalk between your signal and your ground wire. It also looks a little neater, which is really why I'm doing it more than anything else, because try all you want, you will never eliminate all noise on your guitar, especially if you're using extremely high levels of gain. At some point you're going to have to, you know, turn to using a noise gate. That dude's ready to rock and roll. Literally. If all went to plan, feed the wiring down into the guitar, line up my screw holes. If I'll start this one, it's sometimes a bit of a bear wrestle to get these guys started because they're going in at an angle. But a little bit of paste wax there helps it go home. Boom! There we go. A really cool electro socket, and test it out. Fits like a charm. Boing! I have shortened these leads coming from the pickups a little bit because I'm going to make jumpers. And I like to do this, especially on guitars I know I'm not going to be swapping pickups out on, because trying to solder these little tiny wires onto the switch is a pain in the ass. I don't want to deal with it. And since I'm not coil splitting or anything like that, I'm just going to go ahead and make little leads. Got a bunch of jumpers made. I'm going to do yellow for the bridge and white for the neck, and then those are the grounds. And according to Seymour Duncan's wiring diagram here, the black is actually the signal. The green gets bonded to the shielding wire, so that's ground. And if you're not coil splitting, the red and white, they get twisted together and soldered. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. This rosin core solder likes to spatter. And the little smoldering hot pieces of rosin could possibly damage your finish. So if you're soldering over the guitar body, you just have to put something on there to cover it up. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare all my leads here, and then we'll do solder splicing so I can extend my jumpers and heat shrink it all in. Now that I got my my leads tinned here, I've got the red and white get bonded together, as do the green and the ground, and then the black is actually the signal wire. I'm going to heat shrink this guy real quick because that connection's done. This is actually the ground side, right? So I'm changing it on my jumper lead just because I like to use these. They're a little easier to deal with, and I want a little bit of a service loop so that I could take the control plate out of the guitar and work on it separately. So both leads are tinned, and because they're already tinned, I could just touch them together and do a solder splice. There we go. That's that connection. And this is going to be kind of a two-stage heat shrink on this guy, so get that cloth pushback wire pushed back as far as I can. Then we're going to do this right over the solder splice itself. Quick shrink. While that's cooling off, I'm going to go ahead and make my connection for my signal wire. I'm not calling them out by colors, I'm just calling them ground and signal. So I'll solder splice this guy. This is why I needed it to cool off, so I could get this thing so I can get it on there. Come on, there we go. Same thing on this side. I'm going to shrink those back up. That two-stage heat shrink just kind of helps. It's a little thicker because of the addition of that silver wire. Just helps lock it in. It's good to have a kit of heat shrink if you do a lot of guitars. Of course, I've got all this stuff from my little guitar workshop here, but I bunch all these wires together like so. You can see that. Then do one big heat shrink over the whole shebang. So I got that guy all heat shrinked here. Get some heat on the heat shrink. Let that cool off just a little bit. And then one last piece. And I'm layering all this stuff up mainly because I want to have an extremely durable connection here. And I don't want to worry about whether or not it's going to stand the test of time. Having this staged approach to the heat shrink, keeping things in check. I just have the standard 2-wire lead that you would have from like a regular Telecaster setup versus humbuckers. So now I've got jumpers where I've converted from the 4-wire lead humbuckers to these, a little bit more manageable. I've got for my output jack, I've got my neck pickup, I've got my bridge pickup, and while we're at it, let's give this a test with the multimeter. It's 7.16, just pretty typical for a PAF humbucker. And that's the Seymour Duncan Pearly gates, and that's exactly what I measured before. The dummy coil, the lower portion, has a lot of windings on it, so it has a much higher DC resistance, and you'll see that here in a sec. Get the leads on there. So that's at 18.03. That doesn't equal its output because you got to think about the inductive coupling of the pickup. But mainly, I just want to make sure that it's connected. All right, so we know that this all tests out good. I see the DC resistance where it should be for those particular pickups. So now I'm just gonna kind of set all this stuff to the side for the time being because I need to make my control plate. So my wire, this is left, I've got spools of this stuff, but this is some leftover I had from another project. Like I said, I keep my scraps. A new control plate. This is actually nickel. So this is going to take on that tarnish. Got the Emerson .047 microfarad paper and oil cap. I'm going with 500K pots. It took me a while to figure this out, but I'm mixing the Seymour Duncan humbucker with their vintage stack. And if it was just straight going the vintage stack set, Seymour actually recommends 250K. But because I'm using the humbucker, I'm going to try and keep it from getting too muddy in the neck position. And with the 250K pots, it might make a humbucker sound really muddy, and I don't want that. This is a treble bleed that I've got pre-built here with just a couple of jumpers. I'm actually going to put this so that the switch is at the back. So if I want to do volume swells while I'm playing it, trying to get the pedal steel effect, I can. Some CTS pots come with, these are short shafts, but they're not always the same length. Like the Fender replacement ones are actually made for Fender, and this bit's a little shorter. CTS are these Emerson ones that are made for Emerson by Chicago Telephone Supply. They have a little bit different length on the shaft, but it's still a solid short shaft potentiometer. So there are differences. Just be aware you may have to space them out differently with different washers and nut combinations so that your tone and volume knobs aren't 5 miles too high. I think this control plate I got from Godo. It's made in Japan. And it was one of the few ones I can find that was nickel. Most of them are chrome plated. I think the original ones would have been chrome plated too. Get these all lined up here, facing each other. Now remember, this one's my volume, that one's my tone. Normally, they're the other way around. Get my little 1/2-inch wrench and tighten them down. I'm going to turn this in relation to me so I know what I'm doing here. I've got some wiring diagrams. This one's the one provided with the vintage stack. But then I also got Fenders. So I'm kind of doing a hybrid between the two ways that they've got it wired up here. And I'm doing this so that the solder will stick to it extremely well. Takes whatever corrosion was on there right off. Now I'm going to give you all a bit of advice right now. Do not, no matter how tempted you are, create hooks on the leads of your components. And the reason why is when you go to fix this stuff later, if you got little hooks on everything, you're going to be hating life because it's going to be a real chore to get it all back apart. Certainly the next guy who gets to fix the guitar after you're done with it will enjoy your all of your hooks and your twists of wire around all this stuff. Trust me, it's a pain in the butt to go and fix that after someone's had been monkeying around with it. I have to go from this center terminal on the tone pot to the volume pot outside leg, and then it grounds. Now, some circuits split them apart. Some circuits have the tone cap just on the potentiometer. I'm doing it the way Fender does it. I'm just kind of pre-measuring the wire here to figure out how much I got to cut off, because I don't need all of it. Here we go. Boy, that cap just fits in there, doesn't it? So, while he's in there, I'm going to take, and we're going to make a little curlicue on the end of here, like so. That is just to have a place for the solder to go. Now, I always like to score the potentiometer too before I solder to it. So I know that lead's going right there. So we're going to score. And that just gives a really good mechanical connection for the solder to bond to. I like to use these gator clips on potentiometers to try and prevent some of the heat spread. On the outer housing, it's not so critical, but on the terminals, there's always the potential of damaging the carbon film resistor on the inside of there from overheating it. You may not completely screw it up, but you could change its resistance value from heat. Too much heat, that is. So, get a little bit of heat going there. And just fill up the loop. That's all it needs. We'll do this side next. My gator clip on there. Same situation. Give it the old heat. Do it from this side. Same situation here. Give it the old heat. Flow a goodly amount of solder in there just to fill the loop. Make a quick little adjustment on my loop because I like to work neat. Boy, you don't want to pull these things off right away. These are copper alligator clips. They work great for heat sinks to protect your work, but man, you try to pull that off right away, you're going to cook yourself. This is going to take some heat, but remember, this is the back cover, so it's not actually on the carbon film material itself. So you should be able to throw a pretty decent amount of heat into that and not destroy stuff. You can see the rosin on that because it's kind of it's a rosin core solder, so it's got its own flux, helps it flow out. So I just need a small jumper from here to here. It's good to have all these little scraps. That's why I'm not concerned about jumpers that I got to cut off, because that scrap will come in handy at some point in the future. Move my heat spreader to this leg. That goes there. And we'll cut the other end to length when I make my final terminations. That way I can make it all nice and neat. Trim the excess. That one didn't have too much. And I like to push the cloth pushback wire right back down onto the the end of the terminal. So I'm going to leave this bit long here because I've got the switch has to come over here, which will be my next connection. I'll just leave that hanging for now. Got the switch all mounted and tightened down. Like I said, remember, that's my volume knob right there. Okay, this is the best pair of wire strippers I ever had. It's just a little pair of Leatherman Squirt ES4s. And they're super sharp and very precise, and you can stick them in your pocket. There we go. Got through the outer one. The inner one's a little bit more fussy. I don't want to tear up the center of that wire. What we're going to do is we're going to burn off the frays real quick. So the way that I got to snake this through here is actually a little backwards from a normal Telecaster because of how I'm going to wire this guy. So I've got to thread this through here. So that's how it goes. Now normally this switch would be towards the front of the guitar, but since I'm reversing it, I kind of have to do it a little differently. So this wire snakes through the switch. So if you just strip a really long piece of wire and then you kind of twist the ends of the terminals so that the wire will pull straight through it, you can actually make these connections with just one single wire instead of making a bunch of little jumpers. There's no need to do that, at least on a Telecaster. On a Strat's a little bit different. I don't like to solder them when they're sitting vertical, especially if this end of the switch is facing up, because the solder tends to wick down into the switch mechanism and it could screw it up. So if you just solder it on its side, you don't have to worry about it. And you just need enough solder to fill in a little eyelet on the end, and that's it. That's a done deal right there. So you can see how that one conductor snakes through that switch. You can hear that it still functions just fine. Alright, so now I got my switch wired and it's all groovy. I've got to just get it over to where its home is and then kind of trim off the extra lead here. So after trimming these wires and pushing back the outer cover, I gotta fish them in here through this terminal on the potentiometer, and that is the volume pot. Gator clip to help me out, and then I also have this treble bleed here. That guy's not getting soldered yet because since I got the control plate flipped around, volume, tone, and three-way switch. So because this is my volume, this is where my treble bleed's going. So that's the tone knob, my tone cap with the one end grounded, just like Fender Tellies are usually done, with this lead going to this side. And then normally this side of the volume pot would go to the three-way switch that would be there. But because it's back there, the wire's actually going the other way. So that's the only real change, is that you're just moving the wire. Let's get my little heat sink on here real quick. There we go. And get this soldered in, and we'll solder this guy together. Get in there and move that right where I want it. Give it a second or so for that solder to solidify. That is all neat and ready to go. That one still has to go to the output jack. That's the signal wire from the output jack. And then I'll have to bend this guy up out of the way temporarily so I can terminate all my grounds on there. And then I gotta just make my neck and my bridge pickup terminations there, and then this should be a done deal. I'm just gonna take some time to put a little bit of tape in here. This is just temporary. Paper towels, tape, safe, cheap insurance, right? First thing I'm gonna do is bend this guy up and out of the way, because I need to make a point for all my grounds. Let's score that up right on the Emerson Pro. Sorry, Emerson. But I need good quality solder adhesion. So I need to tin these tips real quick. Get them ready to solder to the guitar body. Pre-tinning the wires is a good practice, because when you go to do the final termination, you don't have to flow as much heat and solder into the joint. Now I need to kind of figure out how much of the lead here I need. Kind of made out where I want everything to go. It's a little bit of a mess here, but I went ahead and tinned and trimmed my wires to length. I'm going to, everything's getting bonded to the back of the volume pot, but I need a little bit of working space here. I can't just solder everything to one blob. The body shielding I'm going to solder to this point right here, and I'm going to have to hold that with a little pair of pliers here. Plop those down right there, and it's going to get squidgy real quick. Get my solder in there to start flowing everything out. So you heat everything up. There we go. And then get my pliers, hold my alligator clips again, and hold that dude still until it solidifies. That thing's going to be rocket hot, so I'm just going to wait a second, and then we'll go to the next one. So these three wires here are the ground wires from the pickups, and also the ground from the output jack. And it's going to go right here. So get this in place. Put my pliers down so I can grab the solder. Flow some solder into it. Now the fun part's going to be holding this dude down until it cools, as I put a big old blob of solder in there, because it gets really squirmy. Alright, I think we got it. Alright, so now it's cool enough. And get my alligator clip out of there and then simply push the wire covering the pushback of the cloth pushback wire with the insulation right back to where it came from. That is the signal side of the volume pot, that middle bit right there. So I just need to get this wire in there. Into the center loop of that terminal. And then gator clip him in place there so he doesn't get away on me. Just like everything else. Go in here. There we go. It looks like it's done. I'll give it a quick check. Make sure, as it appears to be, properly soldered. Slide that pushback wire back. That's all nice and neat. I'm going to tie wrap that stuff. So we have the signal wire going to the output jack goes to the center terminal of the volume pot. All of our grounds are common bonded to the back of the volume pot. We'll neaten all this stuff up with tie wraps here in a minute. I just have two more connections. This terminal here on the three-way switch is for the neck pickup, which in the case of our new jumpers is our white wire. I am going to do it like the other ones, give it a little bit of a twist, which you can do safely. Just don't go bananas with it, right? Get this guy in here. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. Alrighty, get him ready to go. Alright, there's that one. This one right here. So this guy's going to end up being our bridge pickup. So a little twist. And we'll make that final termination. Just trying to fill that void with just enough solder like that to do the job. There we go, we're terminated. We have our bridge pickup, our neck pickup, and you can kind of tell by how the wiper goes, the signal path goes through that terminal, through this jumper, and then out to the volume knob, and that's with that all the way back, which because the control plate's flipped around, that is our bridge pickup. Sweet. So just a little bit of tidying up here that I want to do. Get a couple of tie wraps just so I have neat and tidy work. Get the old zip ties on here because it matters. It matters to me enormously that that this work is done correctly. It's done neatly, not just because it's my guitar. I did this on customer guitars I've had into my workshop over the past years. It's important for longevity. You know, you don't know how many years that these things will survive. There are guitars that have outlasted the guys who built them easily. I mean, we talked about earlier, you know, the original broadcasters and no-casters. Well, heck, that's from the early 50s, right? People still playing them. Tie wrap around these grounds just to kind of get them situated here so they're not Going all cattywampus in all directions. Cattywampus. I don't think I need more than one. Put too many tie wraps in there, and the zip ties will prevent everything from kind of going back together neatly. Let's give this guy a trial fit. Get that out of there. I'm going to leave this side on for now. I should have plenty of slack in the old harness here to get all this stuff packed in there. Oh yeah, it's going to fit. So I don't want to put this all together yet. We need to test the circuit. If you put the tuning fork over the pickup, you stir the magnetic field just like the string would. Test out your circuit without putting strings on the guitar. So we're in the bridge position, and I've got fluorescent lights in my workshop, so some of the noise I hear in the background isn't from the guitar, it's from the lights. Alright, so both of those are working. So the neck and the bridge. Neck, no bridge. So all three positions are working. So that was the tone, which is working great. What about the volume? Alrighty, so the circuit's basically done. It's all working. Just gotta neaten it back up and tuck it away, and then the wiring, it all checks out. Sweet. Alright, the last thing I want to do here is my little treble bleed. I'm worried about these wires shorting against the grounding out against the back of the potentiometer for the volume pot. So I am simply going to slip some heat shrink over it, shrink it down, and that'll prevent that from being a problem. It also could short out against the inside of the control cavity since it's now grounded, right? So just a big old piece of heat shrink. And they're easy enough to get these supplies off, Amazon or any website nowadays. Back in when I was a kid, you just go to Radio Shack and get that stuff. Well, there is no Radio Shack. There, perfect. So I don't have to worry about the leads on that grounding out against anything. So no problems. Look at that. That's a wonderfully nice and neat installation job. Just enough wire to do the job. No wire that I don't need. Now, we'll just gently lower this down in here. Tucking wires where they need to be tucked. So now I just need my screws. Start that one. Bigsby out of my way a little bit. Start this guy. This is why I left these two screws loose. It's because I knew that it was going to push forward against the leather. So I'd rather the control plate center up because the leather is going to have some flexibility to it. Not the control plate, it's a piece of steel. It's going to go where it wants to go, and that is it. So tighten this one down, and tighten this one down. Move my paw prints off of here. It's going to corrode fast enough on its own. I don't need to help it right away. The nickel plating, which was kind of the point. Like I said, I kind of want it to patina a little bit, just so you don't get too precious about it. Just go play it. Once I finish cleaning this off, all I have left to do is put the switch tip on and the witch hat control knobs, the Fender amp style, witch hat control knobs, and then the electronics are done. I don't see no more fingerprints. I think we got her. Alrighty. Do I go witch hat or do I go vintage 52 and earlier style? I'm leaning towards this one. This one here is Bakelite, so it's more authentic reproduction. It's even got the little patent number and all that stuff on the bottom of it, so it's a pretty much a dead ringer for an original Fender. You know, from, I think they started putting these on maybe 54-ish, 59. So this would have been early, and then this would have been later until all the reissue stuff came out. Boom. Might be easier to hook that with the old pinky too, because it kind of sticks up there higher. Now we just need to get the control knobs on here. I'm going with the amp style knobs again. Get the B blender arm out of my way. Make sure I got these clocked. I'll do them one at a time. So that full on, full volume, no tone is at the 10 position facing me. So the way you do this is you tighten that down a little bit so there's a tiny bit of drag on it. Not a lot, just enough to clock it where you want it. You know, when you're turning it to the direction of full on. That way the potentiometer shaft doesn't move on you when you cinch it down. Then give it a good little turn. There we go. Boom! Perfect. I can't remember where I got these. These are Bakelite also. I think these literally legit are Fender amp knobs. God, I think it's years since I first got these. I can't remember where I bought them from. Cinch it up. Boom! Sweet! So that's about it for today, but all I gotta say is check that out. That's pretty sweet, don't you think? So now I'm really getting excited to put this thing completely together. The only thing left to do is, you know, just a basic setup. Condition the fretboard, clean up the frets. There's no wear on these frets whatsoever. I just need to get some of the tarnish off of there. Get the rosewood, nice lemon oil, condition it, set it up with some strings, figure out how this B bender on the Bigsby is going to work, because I've never set one of those up, so that'll be a learning experience. Set the intonation, get it set up, and get it so it plays, but we are like this close now. After more than a year of it sitting in component parts, my Telecaster version 5.0 is almost ready to rock, literally. Thanks for watching. If you wouldn't mind clicking the like button and then subscribing, and also hit the bell notifications so that when I put out another video, if you're even interested in them, because I still can't believe anybody watches this crap, then YouTube will send you a notification, let you know that they're out there. And until I see everyone the next time, take it easy.